Guys, Brady Slack here. Okay, let's talk about how you got into what and why again.
You're good. So I'd known Jimmy for a couple years. We spoke at a couple of the same events or conferences or coaching groups or whatever, mastermind groups. And so we followed each other on socials. And so I'd seen him building this group. I didn't really know what it was. We weren't close enough for me to, I think, really understand where the day was. But I knew he had this men's group since, I don't know, 2019. Yeah, probably about 2019. I've always been a part of mastermind groups, coaching networks, business groups, whatever you want to call them. And not just like your local community, but like guys from all over the country kind of coming together, out of Texas, out of Florida, whatever. And so one of the groups that I was in, kind of the main group I was in at the time, this was 2023 going into 2024, was kind of coming to a close. Like they have like a year segment, and then if you want to renew, you can. But I just felt like I got what I wanted to out of that group. And so I was kind of being done with it anyways. So yeah, I'd seen We Are the They. Funny enough, I had some clients who were in a couple of the first groups. And then I had a couple of business partners who were in some of the subsequent groups too, like 2 and 4. And so I called Jimmy and I was like, hey, this is kind of where I'm at. This is my situation. I'm coming out of the phase of some of these other groups. I've seen what you're doing with We Are the They, and I'm interested in maybe taking that up.
What made it like stand out to you? I guess just references from it.
Well, yeah, for sure. Definitely some of my business partners and some of those clients had great reviews about We Are the They. But at that specific time, funny enough, I was selling my main business.
Okay.
And so some of the groups that I'd been a part of were specific to like the financial services industries. And because I was selling that business, those were a couple of the groups that I was like, I just feel like I don't need to extend my stay. There's not much more because I don't have the need that I can get out of these groups. So, and again, I just thought WAT was like a kind of generalized business group, to be honest with you. And so that's why I was like, this is intriguing. Something to keep me busy, a group of guys that I could, keep me stimulated. I'm coming off the sale of this business, kind of figuring out what's next. And so that's what intrigued me about it.
Yeah.
And then really quick too, like every single time I've gone into a group or I've hired a coach, if you will, there's kind of 4 metrics that I always look for, faith, family, finances, and then fun, if you will. But like, I always want to make sure that whoever's going to coach me is excelling in at least 3 out of the 4 of those.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where I was like, okay, Jimmy kind of marks a couple of those boxes that I would like to learn from until I can get that next phase, if you will.
I'm sure like being in several different groups, you've had good experiences and not so good experiences as well. Do you think like having those 4 pillars of that is like what determines, if it's going to be a good experience?
Honestly, I kind of made that stipulation after I had some bad experiences in a couple of the groups.
Yeah.
Where early on, like 2019, 2020, 2021, I had hired coaches or gotten a part of groups that I felt like were going to get me to the next level, only to find that the coach was full of shit or the group like really wasn't helping me do more, be more. And so that's kind of when I started probably in about 2020, end of 2021 going into 2022, really defining like, okay, here's for me what success in these 4 areas of life look like. And that's what I want to mold.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's interesting because whether the like in We Are the They, I think what we get is like so full spectrum of like everybody in the group, and like they all bring their own like their perspectives on faith or family or business, and like but it creates this like whole like it's almost this full circle of like wherever you want to grow at in any area of your life. I feel like there's somebody in the group that's like, I mean, for the easiest example is like Dustin and like the physical fitness areas, like, or you look at some of these other guys in their business areas and things like that. It's like you literally have anybody in the group to look at. And I think that Jimmy does a pretty good job of like not making it a focus on like, like himself of being like religious or being like full business mode or full. I think he procures like an environment where all of it can grow.
Well, and I think like give credit where credit is due. Jimmy has done a great job of refining the program, Like I think groups based on from what I understand, like 1, 2, and 3 might have gotten a completely different experience than like 4, 5, 6, 7, etc.
Sure.
Only because I think the container changed and the program changed to where it's a little bit more structured, a little bit more rigid, and Jimmy is not the individual doing that. He creates the container and facilitates, but it's the collective group who does the rest.
Would you say that's the biggest like difference between the groups that you've been in the past and now, or what would you say that is?
I just think they're different. Like the other groups that I've been a part of or the other coaches that I've had have been very secular in what they're trying to do. Whether that's the group focus, like specifically on tax or specifically on e-commerce or whatever that is. And in some of those cases, the individuals who were running those groups, I felt like it kind of were running it with like their head cut off like a chicken because they were managing their own portfolio of businesses and trying to do the group. And so that didn't necessarily always go very well. And then as far as some of the coaches go, I just, again, it was really granular. And again, I went into those knowing what the expectation was. I didn't know what to expect out of what. Like, to be honest with you, I didn't know that we would be talking about the father wound and the mother wound, and that we would be diving into, you know, really like a lot of breath work and inner work and stuff like that. Like, honestly, this is the phase, maybe not. Had I started to look at WOT maybe a year or two before I did look at WOT, I probably wouldn't have never joined WOT. Because that to me at that time was like, that's foo-foo, like that's weird.
Sure.
But the phase of life where I was in, I still don't think I realized what WOT was, but I still was like, okay, I'm ready to do a little bit more personal work than that.
Do you think that's changed now from like where you were at?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. I think I'm, again, like just, I was talking about this with my wife the other day, like situationally in 2024, if we're talking about kind of that April, May, June, July segment of time into quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2024, I was kind of riding this artificial high, if you will. Like I was 28 years old. I just sold the business for a few $1,000,000. Like I thought I was kind of hot shit. Sure. And when I went, in fact, like there are still a couple people who genuinely probably deserve an apology from me in our group, because like we would hop into the mini masterminds and I not having on a Moab, kind of bringing down my walls, hopping into that second Ludus, me riding this like artificial high of like, I'm hot shit. I just sold the business. Sure. I'm, you know, I've made it, if you will. Yeah. I probably came off a little arrogant and cocky, and it is what it is. But like the kind of the path or the experience that I've had over the last year and a half, if you will, in WOT is really like kind of breaking down those walls and making me realize like I've accomplished some really cool things for how young I am, but there's still so much more that I can attain. And there's more to me than just that, because that was like all consuming for a number of years. Sure. So that journey is,
I think WOT will humble you in a lot of ways.
In a lot of unexpected ways. Yes. To be honest with you.
Because like I think we have such a like narrow mind at first of like what success looks like to us. And we take it by like certain different measurables of like, okay, I am proficient in this, I'm proficient in this and this, and that makes me successful, when like there's a way other half of the circle almost that we don't even see. And like we get to, it's not necessarily like a comparison game, but we get to see people that might be better in those areas than we are. And it just like, it allows us to be able to like get down to a humble state to grow.
Even so, just within the last week or two, there was an interview between Tony Robbins and Alex Hormozy that was released. Have you watched that?
Yes. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Okay. So I watched the whole thing yesterday, and that idea is what they're talking about. And I resonate. I actually felt like Tony was giving me advice. Like I have a whole list of notes that I wrote after I was listening to it, because Alex Hormozy, I think very similarly to Alex. Alex is way more successful than I am, and I'm never going to pretend to be like him, but we do think very similarly. I'm very logical. I have a hard time getting out of my logical brain, you know, that the brain, and I have a hard time getting into my heart. Sure. Like, but I've told that to the group, like, and we've gone through some exercises. I'm better. I'm not great, but I'm better. But anyways, that whole conversation is kind of what Tony does with Alex, and I got a lot out of that in a different sense, like just trying to shift how I'm thinking or what I'm thinking about, to obtain the idea that, okay, it doesn't have to be so arbitrary. There's a lot more opportunity there.
Yeah, and the clips and parts that I've seen, it's like Tony literally unlocks this different side of Alex that nobody's ever seen.
It's funny because so they panned to Layla a couple times in the interview, Alex's wife, and there's these two demeanors that Tony Robbins point to. One is like analytical Alex,
Yes.
one is anabolic Alex that they talk to. And it's funny because like the anabolic Alex is there all the time, but he's always an analytical Alex because he's in his brain. And again, that's how I operate. Like my wife and I were having an argument just this morning, and a lot of that has to do with me too. Like I am in my analytical Alex, if you will, for the majority of the time.
Yeah.
It's there, like my heart is there, but it just has to be brought out more.
Yes.
It was interesting.
How do you think you find to bring it out more?
You're asking the wrong person.
Gotta ask your wife.
Yeah. I don't know, because the phase of life that I'm in right now, earlier before we started recording, you were like, how's it being 30 kind of a deal? And honestly, the year of my 30 so far has been really hard. Things are going really good with business, like financially. My family's doing really well. I have I arguably have a better relationship with my wife now than we've ever had. But internally, I just have this weird wrestle, mostly with myself, trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Like, we've bought a couple businesses, I've started a couple businesses, but I can't really say that those are, they don't satisfy me. They're not fulfilling. And so, again, you're asking the wrong guy, because analytically, I look at the situation and this is why I think I resonate with Alex, where I say, I can suffer through these because ultimately, this is what's putting food on the table. This is what's putting a roof over our house, and we're able to afford a very good life. So I can suffer through that. But really, if I were to go to my heart, which I have a hard time doing, it's like, these don't satisfy me. What can I do that would satisfy me so that I can actually probably do more than what I'm capable of doing right now?
Okay. That's kind of just where I am personally, and some things that I'm thinking of. But. So would you say that you resist going to that side?
Do I resist it? Probably. Do I always know how to get to that side? No. And I think that's part of the problem. So, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously thinking analytically all the time, we get to this makes sense because of this.
Oh, yeah.
And I do this because of this. And it can close us off to a ton of things. I'm sure you've experienced that. And so it's interesting that we do choose to do that. And it's because, and it it shortens our range of emotions that we feel, because we're just I'm going to suffer through this. I'm going to do this, and we're going to get there.
So earlier the question was the journey through what, if you will. If I were in this situation a year and a half ago, I don't even know that I would be recognizing this is what I'm thinking, but this is how I'm feeling. And how can the two maybe live in the same universe, but how can I let my heart lead? That would have never been a thought. It would have just been no, this is the time of season, this is the suffering, and once I get through the suffering, then I can figure it out. That was kind of the mentality before. So there's definitely a lot of progression there to be able to understand the differences and
yeah, absolutely.
Them.
And so with that, I think that goes a lot sometimes over to our purpose. It's if we identify our purpose with, I am a provider, I am, a business owner, I am these different things. So what has been purposefully driven for you in the past, and why would you say that? Would you say it has been the businesses, the family,
when people ask me what I do, I honestly have a hard time responding. I don't want to sit there and list out, I own this business, I own that business.
Yes.
That to me is I feel like that's coming off arrogantly, and so I don't like to do that. But I just the most simple response I say is, I do business that. I'm a business owner. And then people start to inquire, and it bugs me. But that's my own problem, I guess. But what I was getting at with is I don't know that I could necessarily define what my purpose is, which again kind of goes back to this analytical versus the heart fight, if you will, inside of me. But a lot of the reason why I do what I do, or why I'm good at what I do, is because of the way I was raised. We went through the father wound, and I knew I didn't have a ton of father wound, if you will. There were a couple of things got brought up I talked to my dad about, but I knew that the majority of, call it trauma, if you will, I don't really like that word, but the reason that I am the way that I am has to do with my mother wound. I was raised in an environment not to her fault. Like it's actually become my greatest blessing, if you will.
Yeah.
And we talk about it pretty often, but I was raised in an environment where I had, we call it, I had to hustle for my worthiness.
Yes, familiar.
It was never like the phrases that I consistently heard growing up were, don't embarrass me. You have to work harder than everyone else. They're better than you. And like there was the door going out to our garage was plastered with phrases. And then there was a phrase above the stairs. My mom was really big into those stencil phrases when they were in. The phrase above the stairs was, the forest would be very silent if only the best bird sang. And then a couple of the phrases over the door was like, go big or go home, do your best, never give up. Like those kinds of phrases.
Yeah.
Like I saw that 4 times a day going in and out of that garage. And so this idea that I had to hustle for my worthiness, that still is one of, if not the biggest drivers behind why I do what I do. Like, and that's why, again, like I can suffer through these things that maybe I don't necessarily like because they're working, they're going to be successful, they put money in the bank account.
Yeah.
I just don't love them.
Yeah.
But I can do it better than him because that's what is ingrained into my mind. And I'm going to work harder than him because that's what was ingrained into my mind.
Yeah. And so with that, it's like the love was conditional based off of performance.
See, and that's the hard part is like, I don't necessarily know that my performance in whatever it was, or that their love was conditioned upon my performance. I never felt like that.
Okay.
I really did feel like my parents loved me. They supported me, that I could have asked them for a lot of different things and they would have done what they could to help me with those. I just was raised to where like, no, if you want that, you're going to work harder than everyone else to get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in my situation probably would view that pretty negatively. But again, I just choose to look at that and say that's been my greatest blessing. That's my superpower.
Yeah. Do you think that's affected the way that you've like started to raise your kids?
Oof, I hope not. But at the same time, I hope so.
Sure. I think there's there's a balance between
there's
like,
got to be, and that's
we
the hardest.
Want to and we don't want to.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Like, because me and my wife over the last couple of years, like, I'm contributing this aspect too. While like we have done a lot of personal work and we have kind of deep dive into our relationship and talked about things that we do want to do with our boys, things that we don't want to do with our boys. The one thing that, again, like this idea that I had to hustle for my worthiness, there was a really high expectation that was not spoken to me that my parents had. Like things that I just knew that they had this expectation, and to their fault, I never really was going to attain that, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But again, that's become my superpower to say, no, watch me. Like I will do that.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the way that we've decided we are going to parent. Maybe do things with our kids a little bit different, as far as like when I got done with a game, football or soccer or whatever it was always, what can you do to be better?
Yeah.
Now with my son, it's always, hey, what did you do good? Like that's kind of what we lead with.
Yes.
And then I'm always asking him the question, what do you think you could have done better?
Yeah.
How do you think you can get better at that? Like, and letting him kind of formulate those in his mind, because in that way, again, we kind of we start with the praise. I want him to know that he's doing a good job. Like, and I do want that because I didn't get that.
Yeah.
I want him to know he's doing a good job. And then I want him to be able to understand that there's always room for improvement. And I don't want that to be a negative thing. I just want him to be aware of that.
Yeah. I think the awareness is like, I think that's something that a lot of people lack, like especially nowadays. And so like being able to build the awareness, not necessarily you being like, you could do this, and this better, you know, maybe that's like what you might have received as a child.
Yeah.
And versus like building the awareness in your kids to be able to be like, yeah, I did do this good, you know, like, and so they're grateful for that. And then it's like, I can do this better, you know? I think that's beautiful. With the stance on like, obviously childhood, it's, you know, built on worthiness, like, you know, your performance and worthiness were kind of tied a little bit together. Do you think that's created any sort of false destination that you continue to climb to?
I am probably my worst critic. I am my worst critic, and I very well know that. But I don't, and maybe this is naive of me to say, but I believe that I can get to whatever point I set for myself in my life. Like if I'm thinking I'm going to make X amount of money, like I'm actively thinking of a way to get to that. And I think I can get to that. And this is something that, again, like I have to continually work through, is the self-talk that sometimes comes up when I don't reach those goals in the time frame that I give myself to reach those goals is negative. It fires me up and makes me want to do it more, but I could probably stand to work on how I talk to myself a little bit better. So do I think it's unattainable? No. Is it high? Yes. But I think a lot of that just comes from how I was conditioned.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say it's almost like an endless cycle of like, I do this to get to this, and then I get to this just to set another one.
Yeah.
So do you think it's like an endless cycle of that? And what is that? And
I mean, my question to you would be, is that a bad thing?
No. I don't think so.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is I think there are people who would say yes.
Sure.
I think there are like, and that's why I recognize that I am different than other people, and I'm okay with that, because I have been in conversation. Like me and my wife, we have some friends, husband and wife couple that we used to do a lot with, and she'd made some comments about how much her dad works compared to how much I worked. This was a couple years ago. We were like in the thick of it, going through the business sale, and like we were really busy. So I understand where she was coming from, but at the same time, we don't hang out with them anymore. And it's just for the simple fact that like she just doesn't understand why I am the way I am, and her comments kind of ticked me off. And so I didn't need that in my life. And I had a great conversation with my wife about it, and I told her how I felt. She understood how I felt, and we just kind of stopped hanging out with them, So I don't think it's a negative thing, but I do think, it does create the cycle, and I just try and keep bigger.
I think like the westernized culture is, there's a lot of like hype and things around like hustle and like you have to do this to like get to this level, and you got to keep going, and like versus like some other cultures where they take their pride in like sitting outside and like just not doing it, just really enjoying life and taking things in. And we talk a lot about like self-love and things like that in the group, and taking time for yourself and sitting in silence and like doing the meditation stuff. How's that been for you?
It's been good. I could be better as far as like when I would before I started WA, I'd get hot really quick.
Okay.
Like my boys would do something and I would flip a switch and I'd get really mad.
Sure.
Now it takes me a little bit to like really flip that switch. I still get that flip switched.
Yeah.
They're kids, right? 5 and 3 and 1, and they yell nonstop. But I do like the breath work has helped me like, okay, this is not that big of a deal. What is a big deal? Now, like I go hunting mostly by myself, but I go hunting once a week.
Oh, nice.
For 3 or 4 hours. Just me and my dog. Like we'll go hunting for a couple hours at least once a week. And that is something that I never would have taken the time to do before. But like one of my goals this year is actually to spend more time doing my hobbies.
Yeah.
And so, like WA has helped me understand that I can go work a 60-hour, 80-hour work week and try and accomplish all the things that I want to accomplish. But ultimately, like I am a miserable person when I do that. And so I do need to kind of step back, and like my morning routine has changed drastically. I would argue that my relationship with God has changed drastically. My relationship with my family has changed drastically. And some of those relationships were on the back burner for a while. And so just the way that I kind of go about prioritizing some of those relationships or some of those activities has changed. And I would say I'm still doing business-wise what I want and financially what I want to.
Obviously, like being, I think I'm the youngest one in our group. Cove might be like
probably,
right there.
Right
but
there.
Like being there and being able to like see so many examples of like how these guys do it. I mean, we look at guys like Brian Dickerson, where he like, has a massive company, but he still is able to like spend time with all his grandkids. Like that's one of his goals, and he does it very well. But then we also have people who are in different stages of life, like you, where it's like it's still hustle, and it like I don't think there's either way is wrong. I think it's just like different stages of life. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a blessing for me to be able to like experience all of this from you guys and be able to kind of like choose like which path I want to take.
Careful what path you choose.
And it's like, and it's probably honestly a combination of all of them, because everybody's got messed up in their own way, But it has been very inspiring to see like like what my next steps could look like. So like I give props to you and everybody else just because it's like, okay, I'm here, but this might be what my next step looks like. And it's cool to be able to like sit down and have a conversation with somebody who is at that next step.
Yeah.
So it's been a blessing for sure. I think like learning from you, like you take care of your family so well from the outside.
My
like,
wife might say otherwise.
Sure. But I mean like I could sense that you bring like such a masculine leadership to your household. And I think that like will benefit your boys as they grow up more than like so many things. Coming from Missouri, I don't see a lot of like functional families at all. Yeah. And it's the biggest thing that I don't see is a masculine presence in the family. Yeah. And I think that's what like has like most of my friends, their parents are either divorced or they hate each other. And like where they start to go south is if they don't have that masculine presence in their household. And so like just being able to like learn that from you guys and being out and engulfed in the like Utah culture of like, you know, the faith leadership in the household as well. Tell me a little bit about that and how you try to like, how do you keep that presence in your house? Like I see it from the outside in. How do you try to keep that presence?
Again, don't say that loudly to my wife because she'd probably tell you otherwise, but I appreciate the compliment.
I feel she'd agree with me.
Yeah. We try and parent our kids how me and my wife were parented, and I would say we were parented pretty similarly. My boys get their mouths popped if they say something they shouldn't say. My boys get their bum spanked if they do something they're not supposed to do. We don't believe in timeout. Yeah. I don't think that accomplishes anything. That's just my opinion. But odds are is we'll never ground our kids because that's just punishing me. You have to sit around at house. I don't want you there. Sure. You know? Like the way that I look at it is I've got 3 boys. 5, 3, 1. Our argument's sake, I think we're done. But at one point or another, those kids are going to be someone else's son-in-laws and someone else's husbands and someone else's fathers. And I feel like me and my wife, I feel like we have a responsibility to raise them in such a way that they can preside, provide, and protect over their families. Because that's inevitable. That's going to happen one day. And so if I put myself in the shoes of someone who had a daughter, what would I want that to look like? And that's kind of how I try and raise my boys. Again, like going back to what our conversation was earlier, like we do have a high expectation for our boys. We expect that they're going to do hard things. You know, we expect them to be kind. Every day I leave for work, I always ask all 3 of them, even my 1-year-old, you know, are you going to be kind? Are you going to work hard? And are you going to have fun? Like, are you going to listen? That, like, those kinds of things just every day kind of set the tone, make sure that they're aware that, okay, this is what's expected of me. And there's 3 or 4 things we do expect of them. And you know, the rest of the time, we kind of leave that up to them. Hey, figure it out. You know, if there's a problem, find a solution. If you need help, ask. We're more than willing to help. But I don't know, those are kind of some of the principles that I think we're trying to raise them, ultimately knowing that they're going to have to do that one day themselves.
Yeah,
know?
Absolutely. How do you think faith has like directed that?
Honestly, this is probably an area of my life that I've lacked the most in over the last 5 or 6 years. I think I've prioritized other things over that. For example, I've actually never read the Bible, the Old Testament before, and this year I'm started this. That's a relationship I'm starting to prioritize a little bit more, and so I picked that up and have started reading that. But I would hope nothing more that no matter what my kids' beliefs are, that they know that they have a Father in heaven who loves them, that through their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ they can return to live with Him. That no matter what mistake they make, they're not less than. It's just a learning lesson. Like those are some of the things that I hope they learn and understand. And that is hopefully what we portray as we parent them. Like those things that we love them, that yes, we're going to make mistakes and that's okay, but we're all here. We all make mistakes and we can all help each other. You know, everyone's always going through something. So be kind to people. You know, that's a lesson that we drive home a lot. And do your best. I think that's really all we are asked to do is do our best. There's not like you have to do this, you have to do that. But one thing that I do know is that, and I want them to know this too, is that as you start to do some of those things, like follow commandments or do whatever, you are blessed. Like there is more to that. You know, it's one of the lessons that I learned just recently, not to get too spiritual, but this actually hit me really hard. because I'm reading the Old Testament, I'm going through the creation and how God has dominion over all of the things that he created, but he gave his dominion of us up by giving us agency. He's letting us choose. So in other scriptures, it talks about him with the move of his hand moving water or making wind go or whatever, or making an animal appear, talking about Abraham, the story of Abraham. And so, but the one thing that he talks about is if we follow his commandments, his hand will be over us. So as we follow commandments, as we walk with God, if you will, we have his help. Like his hand is over us and we become quote unquote more powerful, right? Yeah. And that's what I want them to understand. Like we're all going to make mistakes and that's okay. But if we choose to follow him, we'll have his help.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome because like Matthew 7 talks about like ask and you shall receive. And so it's like God's hand is like always over us. It's just like it's seeking that out. Like
and the premise, like the parable of the talents, like in the scriptures or the other, and I don't know the exact scripture, but it's like unto him much is given, much is required.
Yes.
The parable of the talents, like those kinds of things. It's like if you're given something, if you're given a talent, go do it.
Yeah.
But truthfully, that's not necessarily just like a faith. It is. It's coming from the scriptures, but like that has to do with everything else. Like if you've got a talent, if you're really good at mortgages, if you're really good at coaching, like go do that thing. If you're really good at speaking, if you're really good at fitness, like go do that thing because that's one thing God has given you to go do. So go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Through faith and through leadership and everything, if you could only leave 3 values with your boys, what would they be and why?
Yeah, hard work. Like these are the 3 that I ask them every day. Are you going to be kind? Are you going to work hard? And are you going to choose to be happy? Like those are the 3 things I can control. There's not a lot of other things in life that I can control. But even if hard stuff is happening, I can choose to be happy. Even if shit hits the fan, I can choose to work hard. Even if other people are mean to me, I can still choose to be kind. Like those, and those are the 3 that I say every day. Are you going to be kind? Are you going to be happy? And are you going to work hard?
So you believe happiness is a choice?
I 100% believe happiness is a choice.
Yeah, I think I also believe that.
And I'll put the asterisk here. Like there's only been one instance where I really struggled with like a depression or an anxiety. Sure. It was after the birth of our 3rd child. But all that being said, I still believe happiness is a choice. Even after that experience, having gone through that depression state, I still believe happiness is a choice.
Yeah. I think Alex talks about that a lot of like, if people can choose to be mad for no reason, like why wouldn't you just choose to be happy?
And it's probably not easy for some people, and I understand that. Like some things you have to work to be good at, but we as a society are really inwardly focused. And the more we get out and focus on others, like that's where some of that happiness I think comes from.
Absolutely. I love that. Last question. If you were to go back to your 20-year-old self and you could leave him with one phrase or some advice, what would it be?
See, and this is so hard because this kind of goes back to this idea that I always had to hustle for my worthiness. But like truthfully, that's been my greatest superpower. And the phrase that I would probably tell my 20-year-old self would just be, you can achieve more than you think you can. Whatever you have to do to achieve that, you can achieve more than what you think you can. If you think you can do something in 10 years, put a 3-year goal to it, and odds are by year 5 you'll achieve it. You know, and so that's probably what I would. Matthew McConaughey won, I think it was an Oscar one time, and he talked about like the
chasing his best
self. Yeah, like that to me was like, okay, let's have a conversation in a year, and I'll tell you where I'm at and where I want to go. Like who I'm chasing, that's my best self. Like it's kind of that same principle.
I love that. Amazing. Brady Slack, ladies and gentlemen.
No. Thanks.